Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast. My name is Ryan Ingram, and I'll be your presenter. On behalf of DPS, I want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to join us. I think you're going to find some information that you can use here. Our topic today is how to access your data from within Excel. So let's go ahead and get started by reviewing the topics that I'm going to cover today. We're going to talk about several tools that allow you to get access to the data within Extend or Zap or within your own query libraries, custom programming, whatever database files that you have on your IBM server. We're going to show you how to get at that. The first tool I'm going to talk about is an IBM data transfer tool. It's an older tool, but it is probably the most well-known way for an end user to get access to data and bring it out of the server and onto a PC or a Mac. Then I'm going to talk about a more elegant method using Excel and ODBC. Then, of course, I'm ramping up here because we start talking about our DPS data download tool, which is very user-friendly, no prior knowledge required type of tool. And finally, we're going to take a look at a really top-notch IBM tool called Web Query. And I'm going to finish it off by just showing you some tips and tricks that already exist in Extend and Axon that you may not know about. So without further ado, let's get started. One of the methods you have available for retrieving data from your IBM server and importing it into Excel is by using an IBM provided tool called the Data Transfer from IBM. Now, this tool is not an elegant way of getting at the data, and I won't say that it's actually one of the easier ways, but it is historically a very common way to get to the data, so it's important that I mention it here. This Data Transfer from IBM tool is available either as a standalone program or it's integrated into IBM's Client Access framework, which is the legacy 5250 emulator. For those of you that are using Axon, you would likely use the standalone data transfer from IBM, or you would use one of the more modern methods, which I'm going to recommend at getting at your data. But for completeness, let's go ahead and look at this real quick. If I go to my Start menu and I search for data transfer from IBM, you'll see that I have it show up on my apps list over here. Now, if you're not using Windows 8, you could press your Start button in the lower left-hand corner, look for the IBM folder, and it's going to be inside there, along with where you would set up a client access session or the System iNavigator. You'll see it listed there. Go ahead and click on this. It'll pop up a little window. That's the framework for a little data transfer tool. Now, if you are using Client Access still, and you haven't upgraded to Axon yet, then there is a menu within Client Access at the top that's Actions and Receive File from Host. That'll bring you to the same program. Okay, so let's talk briefly about what this program does and how to use it. Whenever you've popped up the Data Transfer from IBM window, you're going to want to make sure that your IBM server name or IP address is right there. You've got to be able to communicate with the server. The next thing you're going to need to know is the name of the file from Extend, or maybe it's a file that you've created with a query, or maybe it's a file from Zap or one of our products that you want to retrieve and what library it lives in. So for the most part, if you're looking for an Extend file, like a customer master or a vendor master, that's going to come from our default files library, which is DPS 80F if you're on release 8. It would be 70F if you're on release 7 of our software, 60F, and if you're at a lower release level than that, you really need to contact us. We'll get you upgraded. But let's go. In my case, I'm on the latest release of our software, which is release 8. So we're going to look at DPS 80F. That's our library. And then I have to know the file name that I want to use. In this case, I think I'm going to look at items. I'm going to retrieve our item master into Excel. So I can either type in the file name if I know it, or I could click this browse button over here, which would give me a list of all the files that are in DPS-ADF. Of course, I've typed it in, so it positioned it to me. But for the most part, I typically don't use the browse function. It's easier to use a PDF or a Word document version of our file layout book. The browse button's not going to give you English level descriptions of what the files are anyway, so you're likely going to already know this information. And of course, if it's a query that you've created, then you're definitely going to know the name of the database file that you've created. Okay, so the next thing we're going to take a look at is, and you'll notice there'll be some buttons over here we're not going to discuss that are just beyond the scope of this webcast. But we want to make sure that we're sending this to a file. So we're going to select our output device type as a file. And then we're going to need to know where we're going to click on details, because we need to make sure that this is going to come out as in an Excel or a comma separated value format. So with this tool, like I said, it's not as easy as some of the other tools I'm going to show you, but it's been around for quite a while. So we're either going to use BIF8 or CSV. CSV stands for comma separated value. Both will give us a format that can be used by Excel. In this case, we're going to use BIF8. And we're going to press OK. And we're going to put in a file name here, which will, I recommend that we're just going to save this to our desktop, and we will call this item list.xls. That'll give us a nice little document that we can open in Excel. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this Format Options button here. Depending on the release of software of our software that you're on, the date formats can come into play whenever you're doing these queries. So I click on the Format Options, and you'll notice that the first option is Date Format. If you're on release 8 of our software, you're going to want to choose ISO date. If you're on release 7, you could have left it as is, but I'm on release 8, so I'm going to choose the International Standards Organization date format. I'm going to apply that. And that's all I have to do here. I'm going to click on Transfer Data from IBMI. It'll take it a moment as it gets. You see that we have a small amount of items in our test library here at DPS. But click on Open File, and it'll go ahead and open it up in Excel for me. So what have I done? I've managed to use this tool in order to get a database file that was in Extend on the server into Excel for me to manipulate. Now you'll notice some things right away, that this file needs a little bit of cleanup, and I'm not going to get into a lot of Excel formatting options, but these aren't English level field names. These are the actual file field names out of the Extend database. So the first thing you're probably going to want to do if you use this method is to clean up the titles. You might need to filter some of this or delete some columns that you don't need. And we can actually go into highlight everything, go into Data, click on Filter, and that'll give us the ability to look for specifics if we want. But that's enough of this tool. The data transfer from IBMI tool is effective. It gets a database file, whether it's one you created or one from our base files library, over to Excel. It has limitations though. You cannot cause the Excel spreadsheet to automatically refresh the data. So once it's there, it's a snapshot and it's not really live data per se anymore. That data will not have any kind of English level headings to it, so you have to go through and do a fair amount of massaging and cleanup. And unless you have gone behind the scenes with a query, that data is going to be a single database file, which may not be complete. If you're talking about putting together transactions based on a sales rep or like sales rep sales, or maybe you're looking for customers with their sales over the course of a month and you need the customer name and different figures in there, all of that may not live in the same database file. So you may not have the complete data that you need without doing some massaging using query first if you're using this tool. So let's go ahead and take a look at another tool that we have available. Another option that you have available to get your data, whether it's the extenders app data or a database file that you created using query from your server to Excel, is by establishing an ODBC connection and using that through Excel. So there are some components to this. They're not too difficult, but we'll go briefly through the setup, watch how this works, and talk about the advantages of this over using the prior tool that we discussed, which was the client access or IBM data transfer type tool. The prerequisites for using this tool is that you have to have an iSeries Access ODBC driver or a client access ODBC driver. Now, if you have the iSeries Navigator or any of those tools installed, then likely you have these. If you don't have them, IBM has a standalone driver that you can download. That goes beyond the scope of this webcast, so if you need that driver, please contact DPS. We'll be happy to help you get a hold of the driver that you need. Once again, you have to know the library and the file names that you're going to want to manipulate. But we're going to do this all within Excel using the Microsoft Query Wizard. So let's go ahead and start a new Excel document. Okay, so if I want to, the first thing I want to do is establish this ODBC connection. You see I have a completely blank Excel document. So you'll want to come over to the data field. Now, depending on the version of Excel that you're using, data might be in another place. It might be up here at the top. It might be in a pull-down menu. If you have trouble finding where this section is in Excel, feel free to contact me. I'll help you through the process. But in our case, we're using Excel 2013. We need to establish a connection to our database. In order to do that, I'm in the Data tab. I come over to the From Other Sources option. You'll see there's all kinds of different places we could get our data from, but ours is going to be from an IBM server. And we're going to use the Microsoft Query Wizard in order to do that. So from this From Other Sources option, we're going to use the pull-down list and we're going to select From Microsoft Query. Now, if you've done this before, like I have, you're going to have some different options for, you're already going to have some data sources set up. I'm going to delete this one, and we're going to recreate it. So if you don't have a data source to use, you can highlight New Data Source, click on the OK button, and it'll pop up and start guiding you through the process. We're just going to call this My DPS Data. The second requirement is that you have to pick the driver. I told you that one of the requirements is either the iSeries Access ODBC driver or the Client Access ODBC driver. They are essentially the same. So I'm just going to choose the iSeries Access ODBC driver. And then I'm going to click Connect. Now Connect is going to open up a little ODBC window. We don't have to do a whole lot here. We're going to leave. We could change this description if we wanted. I'm going to leave it. Make sure that your server name is here or your server IP address. And then I want you to click on the Server tab. And there is a default SQL schema or library field. We're going to change that to whatever library that you want that contains your data. In my case, it's going to be DPS ADF because I'm going to want to get. We're going to do a customer. Get the customer master this time. We got the item master last time. We'll get the customer master this time. So whenever I do this, my world that I'm going to work with is DPS ADF. So I'm going to leave everything else the same, and I'm going to press OK. It's going to connect to data source, and you'll see that there's an option 4 here. We could go ahead and select our table from this list. We could say, hey, we want to. That's a table and a database file are the same thing. So for the most part, so we could go down here and find our BL cust P, which is our customer master file. and that would be our world of that would be our we would already have that step done. I don't like to do it that way. I prefer to go ahead and press OK here, and you'll see that we've created our data source. Make sure it's highlighted, press OK, and then I like to use the Microsoft Query Wizard in order to select my file and get my fields. So from here, I'm going to go down and find my database file, which is blcustp. That's going to be our customer master file. And once I've located the customer master file, I can either move every field that's in this file into the Excel, or I can be selective about it. I can either take this, click on that little arrow there, and it'll import every field that's in there. So we've got our customer number, our customer name, our address, everything. You see there's a bunch of fields in the customer master file. Or, we'll take all that back out, I could expand this and say, you know what, I want the customer numbers, I want the customer name, the address, the city, the state, and the zip. Let's just say that's all that I want for whatever reason. And press next. Now, the wizard really lets you filter the data so that you can determine, you don't have to bring everything that's in the database file in. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that real quick. Let's say that we only want to bring in these customers if they are in the city of Indianapolis. So we're going to say the city, CS city, equals Indianapolis. Now I am assuming that you have a file layout or some manner of determining what these fields actually mean, what their English level names are. If once again, this is a tool that I believe is a lot stronger than the normal IBM data transfer tool. This method is a lot more elegant, but it doesn't provide the English level names. I'm going to get to that tool next. But okay, so what we've done here is we're filtering, and we're only going to return records out of this file that have the city equal to Indianapolis. So let's go next. And then it says, do we want to sort this any which way? Just for the sake of using the tool, let's sort it by ascending by customer name. And last option, return the data to Microsoft Excel. That's exactly what we want to do. It'll pop up a little import data where you can decide whether you want it to come in as a table or a pivot table or pivot chart. For our case, just so that you can see how this works, we're going to bring it in just as a regular static data table. And you'll see that it's brought in. I'm sorted by customer name. And I've only got Indianapolis. And it's also went ahead and it applied filters for me so that I could come over here and say, you know what, not only do I just want Indianapolis, but I also want only a specific zip code. So we could do that. We could filter it. We could turn this thing. You can make labels or whatever it is that you're trying to do with this query now. So very elegant way of getting the data into Excel. The big advantage to using this over using the IBM data transfer tool that we covered last is that once this is saved, we can actually make this refresh itself so it becomes live data. And the way that we do that is we come back up to our data tab and we go to properties. I'm sorry, we need to go to our connections first and then go to properties. You have to excuse me there. And you'll see that for usage, there is a refresh control right here. And we've got lots of options. And one of the things we can do, we can have it automatically refresh over a period of time. So if you check this, we're having it refresh every 60 minutes. You could key whatever you want in here for the time frame. You can have it refresh the data every time you open this file. So whenever you open up this Excel document, if you want it to go out and retrieve the data fresh each time, you can do that. So, and finally, this last button says if you click the refresh all button, which is one of the buttons that's right up here, do you want this database file to be refreshed? So, okay, so this is a much more elegant method for getting data into Excel. I recommend this one, especially if you're going to have end users using an Excel. They don't have, you could set up the Excel for them or for yourself and not have to worry about how you set that up anymore. You just set it to refresh every time you open the report. You've set it up once, and now you can just access it and use it whenever you need it. So that is all I'm going to show right now regarding this particular tool. Next, I want to show you a much more elegant way of retrieving data from Extend. It's a tool that we've developed. The data access tools that we've discussed so far have been very effective at getting the data from the database and putting it into Excel to where we can manipulate it and massage it as needed. The tools do assume a certain proficiency in database tools, such as you have to probably be able to look through a file layout and interpret the field names. And you might need to use query in order to join some files together so that you have a complete picture of the data to export to Excel. And finally, you have to know how to use the tools. You have to be able to, you have to know how to set up an ODBC connection in Excel and how to make that refresh. And or you might need to know how to use the IBM data transfer tool and understand how the date format comes into play. And while there's nothing wrong with that, that might be beyond what a lot of our end users are willing to do. Maybe more than they're willing to invest in the underlying infrastructure of the software, if you will. DPS has come up with our own version of a data download tool that requires no query knowledge. It requires no knowledge of file layouts, and the end user doesn't have to set anything up. All they have to do is be authorized to the data, and they can go out to a website, decide what they want to download, and it exports it to Excel. Now I'm gonna go ahead and show this to you. So here is my website. I'm about to log in. And once I log in, it's a very simple interface. I'm going to go to the data exporter option, and I'm greeted with a couple of prompt windows. So the advantage to a tool like this is that, as you can see, I haven't had to go out and put any kind of like database information in. I haven't had to select a file or anything. Immediately, I'm prompted with what company do I want to get information for, and I'm only going to see the companies that I'm authorized to see as a user. In this next field, the data type field, it shows me all of the different data exports that my user is authorized to see and authorized to utilize. So in my case, I'm able to see some AR information, general ledger information, some information on inventory, and sales analysis data. Now, if I were to take, for example, let's go ahead and choose inventory balances. I want to export my inventory balances to Excel. I'll choose that. As I'm selecting these, you'll notice that more options show up. So I can add some selection criteria. I want to see inventory balances, but I only want to see them for my Indianapolis warehouse. And these bottom two checkboxes, I'm going to leave these checked for now because this is all there is to it. You'll notice that all I had to do was log in, select the type of data I want to export, and click the export key. And within a couple of seconds, I wind up with an Excel report that I can open up, view, and manipulate. So as far as an ease of accessing the data standpoint, this is incredibly easy. This is something that your end users can use without having to know anything about databases or query or even how to use data access tools. It's a very intuitive tool to use. Now, just to show you real quick what it is that those two checkboxes that I left checked, that include selection criteria and include database field names. I wanted to include those because in our prior examples, we've wound up with this type of field name, the IB Kono, IB Warehouse, IB Item, to where it's not an English type field name. That is what this checkbox meant. It said, hey, I want to go ahead and see those field names. Even though they're not user friendly, I want to see them. And then the one right above it, the include selection criteria, that is row number 1 of our spreadsheet right here. That shows that we wanted to see company number 1 and warehouse Indy, and that's it. Now, just to make this a little more easy to read, I'm gonna expand that out. That way we can see the English descriptions. Now, had I left those 2 checkboxes blank, I could come out here and delete, or I would wind up with this type of a look and feel, to where all I had was my field names in English and my data. And so you can immediately see that this is much easier for anyone, technical or not, to understand and to manipulate in Excel. And not only is the data that you see easier to understand, but it's also more complete than it would be if you just got a single database file. And in this situation, we're looking at an inventory balance file that is a combination of, at a minimum, our item balance and fields from our item master. We've got our description for our item right here, which is not included in our item balance file. So even if you're wanting to go through one of the other tools that are available and pull our item balance file into Excel, you wouldn't have the name of the item, the descriptions per se, because these are contained in a different file. So you would need someone with the knowledge of query to come out and join 2 files together, in this case an item balance, item master, in order to attach this description to the file. And that's a very simple example, but of course as you get into transaction files where you need to pull in multiple files and join multiple files, it can get complex very fast. This DPS data download tool takes that complexity away. You know that what you get is the complete data and that it is joined in the proper fashion, and all you have to worry about is sorting it and manipulating it and turning it into a pivot table if need be, or filtering it down, summarizing it, whatever you want to do with it in Excel. So as far as ease of use goes and elegance and simplicity, this new DPS data download tool is really something that you should check out. If you would like some more information on the DPS data download tool, please just give us a call or shoot us an email here at DPS. One of us will be happy to get back with you and get the information that you need. It's not something that's currently installed on your server, so it's something that we would have to work to set up and configure for you. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next tool on our list, which is an IBM provided tool called IBM Web Query. Now, IBM Web Query is the next generations of IBM's Query 400 product, but I really can't say that it's hard to believe that it's actually in the same family because of how advanced it is. So those of you who have done queries in the past will recognize that this is typically what you wind up with after you've done all of your work in a query. You wind up with different columns on a numbered list, and this is of course the display report feature. You can send these to a report or even to Excel like we've shown earlier. But IBM Web Query, their next generation of their query product, allows you to do much of what you would want to do in Excel directly on the web. This is a product that is easy to use, even for someone who doesn't know query already. And it has definitely multiple tiers. Someone who is a query expert, a data expert with your company, will find that they can do incredible work with this tool. Someone who is more report driven, who understands the data but may not understand query per se, will be able to get in and utilize the functions of web query also. And as you can see, the difference is night and day. You can wind up with dashboards and KPIs. This is an example of a dashboard that IBM put together, but you can see that it's very graphically oriented. But at the same time, this particular webcast was about getting data into Excel. Well, the DB2 web query allows you to export the data in many formats, in HTML if you want HTML pages, or as a PDF, or it is totally integrated into Excel. So it's very easy to create drill downs and hyperlinks and color code different features. So this is a product that deserves its own webcast. I highly recommend it. If you have a need for advanced business intelligence, then the web query product is top notch. We have some of our customers that are already utilizing it, and from what I understand, they all love it. So please contact us for more information on this tool if you are interested. Now, finally, to wrap up our webcast, I would like to show a couple of already integrated features in Axon and Extend. So the first trick that I want to show you is within Axon. For those of you who do not have Axon or do not know what Axon is our graphical interface, our hybrid graphical interface for our software now. It replaces the Client Access 5250 emulator. If you don't have Axon, just bear with me for a minute. Take a look. You might see something you like. If you do see something you like, let me know. I'll set up a demo for you. Give you some more information, whatever you need. Okay, let's flip over to Axon. And this is just a trick that I think a lot of our Axon users don't even know that they have. I've got this open to the customer AR master inquiry. And let's say I wanted to grab this whole block of data here, and I want to put this in Excel. I can just draw a box around this, right-click, selection to spreadsheet file, and say, we'll call this ardata.xls. We'll save it, and then we will go over to our desktop. Okay, you'll see that made it to my desktop, and we're going to open up this file that's been saved here, the one that we created called ardata. And you'll see that all the columns I selected are automatically in Excel, all formatted properly. This is definitely meant as a shortcut. You could copy these columns and paste them individually, but the tool makes it really easy to get right where you wanted to go. The other examples, little tips and tricks that I want to show you within Axon are actually Extend tips and tricks, not necessarily solely related to Axon. But in some of our Extend reports, we already have the functionality built in to send either to create an Excel spreadsheet from the report itself, or to send the report to a database file that then you could export to Excel using one of the tools that we've discussed, whether it's the IBM data transfer tool or the Excel ODBC connection to pull it in. But let's go ahead and take a look. One of these is the build GL account balance download file. And this works by, this is one that actually creates the Excel file. And you do this by entering an IFS directory. IFS stands for internal file system, and it's part of your IBMI. It's like a Windows folder side of the IBMI, if you will. So the report's created, sent to a directory, and if you have that directory mapped as a network drive, it automatically opens up as a spreadsheet. It's pretty handy, pretty nifty. The other option we have is an example of it would be in our inventory valuation report. You'll see that there's a save report selection to file. This has a dual purpose. This could easily be saved to a file, like pressing F2 here, and it'll let us give a description to the file, tell us what we need to know as far as accessing the file. We can either take this and put it in Excel, or we might want to do some database queries on that, whether we're doing that in the classic Query 400 or more preferably in the IBM Web Query, where we could really get some nice business intelligence out of the information. But I don't want to take too much time on this. I just wanted to show you that there are some integrated features already into the software, and some little tips. And definitely, if you're an Axon user, this has nothing to do with Excel, but if you're an Axon user, please poke around a little bit. You might find some interesting features. Like you'll notice that this menu changes depending on what you're doing. Like if you look up and down right now, there has nothing to do with Excel. But as soon as I start highlighting columns of numbers and I right click, you'll see that I can start summing rows. I can start sending things to a spreadsheet. So some neat tips and tricks there for you Axon users. Okay, well, just to recap what we've covered today, we've covered several methods that you can use to get your data from an IBM server into Excel. We talked about the IBM data transfer tool, a method using Excel in an ODBC driver. Um, of course, we talked about the DPS data download tool, which we're all very excited about. And finally, we capped it off by discussing IBM's new version of query, which is IBM Web Query, which I think everybody agrees is an extremely impressive tool. Um, what I would like to do now is I would like to open up the floor for questions. If you'll give us just a moment, I need to switch this from a headset to a conference phone. So while I'm doing that, I will show you the contact information in case some of you would like to follow up via email or give us a call rather than sticking around on the line. But I'll tell you what, thank you all very much. It was a great webcast, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one.